Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss His Girl Friday, starring Cary Grant, Rosalind Russell, Ralph Bellamy, and Gene Lockhart, directed by Howard Hawks. Now, I haven't seen this movie before, so let's get straight on into this. The movie begins with Hildy Johnson, played by Rosalind Russell, chatting with her boss, Walter Burns, played by Cary Grant, about quitting the newspaper business to marry her fiance, Bruce Baldwin, played by Ralph Bellamy, as Walter tells her she can't quit the newspaper as they're divorced and he wants to marry her again. And the conversation between the two works very good, as I do like Walter and Hildy as the two main characters, while they have very good chemistry, as she tells him she is getting married to Bruce by the next day and getting as far away from the newspaper business as possible and say their goodbyes. And I like this setup, as this is a love triangle between Hildy, Walter, and Bruce. And I'm going to make some people angry at this point, a better love triangle than in movies like Twilight, in my opinion. They have lunch together, and Walter tries to get to know Bruce while he purposefully spills food on himself. Then tells the waiter, Gus, a minute later, that he'll have a phone call to make, and he makes the call himself. And I get the impression Walter is a snake, and Cary Grant does a good job at pulling that off tremendously. Hildy shows up, for her last day at work till she gets on a train at 6 o'clock in the evening, while she chats with some other men while Walter and Bruce is working on a story while the doctor comes in. And the editing is very good in this movie, in my opinion. Hildy warns Bruce about not carrying a check on him because of different newspapers. And another thing, it's a lot of money. And Walter tells a man to spy on Bruce while Hildy chats with someone who is a murderer named Earl Williams, as he didn't mean to kill a police officer. And the performances are pretty well done. Hildy walks in behind Earl's girlfriend Molly, and she says Earl is not a murderer, but the newspaper is led to believe he is, while they have a way to hang Earl. As she leaves depressed, and Hildy learns Bruce is arrested, as she comes to him, and Sheriff Peter B. Hartwell, played by Gene Lockhart, comes in to advise hanging Earl at 5 o'clock in the evening instead of 7, while Hildy gets Bruce out of jail. And she goes back to the office for a few minutes and to tell a message to Walter, as she breaks the piece of paper she wrote of the story and tears it up. Despite this is in black and white, the cinematography is pretty well done, as the acting by the actors is also well done. As Hildy is about to leave, Earl escapes from jail, and someone runs from Hildy, but she catches him to talk to him, and she gives the story to Walter about Earl's escape, as it was Peter B. Hartwell's idea, as Bruce once again gets arrested again thanks to Walter. And the editing is very good in this movie, as it's around 90 minutes long, and the story being told is interesting. A man from the governor's office gives out a message saying Earl is an innocent man, and another guy tells the man to keep his mouth shut about Earl's innocence. And Sheriff Hartwell decides to shoot to kill Earl as he approaches Hildy and points a gun at her, and this is when the movie gets intense for me. Hildy helps Earl out and contacts Walter and Bruce and tells them something fantastic has happened as far as the story is concerned. And Molly comes in and sees Earl, and they hide him while the sheriff comes in, and a bunch of other people do as well, as Bruce's mother comes in, very upset with Hildy and Molly, jumping out the window, but somehow doesn't die randomly. And Walter comes in and gets Bruce's mother out of the room, while Louis, after he sees Earl in the desk where they hid him in the first place, and Walter puts the story in the front page. And Bruce comes in wondering why his mother is at where his mother is at, while Bruce is distracting Hildy from writing the biggest story in her career. While Walter is on the phone with the newspaper, and Bruce leaves the room believing she never loved him, and someone comes in to grab something from his desk named Roy Bensinger? Yeah, that's right. And Walter hires him on the spot and double crosses him. After hiring him, and Louis comes in all messed up, and he cleans himself up while Hildy wants to find Bruce a bunch of men led by Sheriff Hartwell coming in to ask and harass Hildy about where Earl is at, as well as Walter, and arresting both Walter and Hildy, telling the sheriff to move the desk. And Bruce's mother comes in and accuses Walter, and she runs out after Walter, knocking on the desk 3 times. And they hear Earl and captures him to put him to death row, or on death row, let me rephrase. And a lot of this is reminding me of Steven Spielberg's The Post, which I've reviewed before, where they work for the newspapers, but with some differences. And the governor's man comes in learning they bribed him, all along with the sheriff and the mayor, and he tells the newspaper, and Walter tells Hildy to go with Bruce and his mother, and he kisses her goodbye, and she hears Bruce has some illegal money and is taken to the precinct, and she cries because he keeps getting arrested, and he breaks it off with her. And Walter says he will marry Hildy again and go on a honeymoon to Niagara Falls, and the climax was very well told, in my opinion. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 8.3 out of 10. I do like the characters, even the 2 main characters, as they have a chemistry, while the conversation works pretty good. And the love triangle between Hildy, Walter, and Bruce is much better than Twilight, in my opinion. Sorry to disappoint. And I get the impression Cary Grant is a snake, and he pulls that off tremendously, in my opinion. I still have to review Casablanca. That's a great movie, and that's probably a good example of that, of his career. The editing is very good in this movie, as the cinematography, despite it's in black and white, and the performances are well done. And the acting is pretty well done. The story was interesting told, and I was getting a lot of the Steven Spielberg's movie The Post with some difference, but the point of it being about a newspaper, and this is also a very good film, as is that film, and this is a solid recommendation. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And until then, this will be the biggest newspaper in my life.